Hi, I'm Niha. I'm the CEO and founder of Just Words, where we give companies LLMs to self-improve content on emails and websites. Prior to being a founder, I was heading multiple growth teams at Pinterest and Twitter. I started out as a platform PM and then moved to consumer teams and then eventually managed growth in multiple teams. I also co-founded City Structure and I was the first hire at TensorFlow. I did my master's from UC Berkeley and my undergrad from the National University of Singapore. During my entire journey, from an engineer to a product student to a founder and then eventually to a PM, I got a chance to look at products with a different lens each time. And now at this point, I can really correlate and compare what my product journey has been throughout. So I want to share some of that with you all. I'll start by sharing how the journey looked as I transitioned from a platform PM to a consumer PM. Specifically, I want to talk about how platform PM experience can sometimes complement your consumer PM experience in the most unobvious ways. Before we get started, let's understand what it takes to be a consumer PM. Pretty table stake things like knowing your customer well, building a product that people want, right? And bringing the team together in making it happen. So let's keep these three in our back pocket and start to understand why being a platform PM gives you that strategic advantage. So first, as a platform PM, you're used to talking to your users directly, unlike consumer PMs in large B2C companies. Turns out you don't have the luxury in the consumer world because you're building for millions of users. And the only way you can learn about your users is indirectly through your research teams that are conducting one-off surveys and foundational studies, right? As a platform engineer, my users were engineers sitting across the aisle, and some of my most difficult as well as memorable conversations were when I would talk to them and they would give me feedback about my product. Something I didn't know going from platform to consumer was how to write a strategy or a PRD without ever talking to my users. In hindsight, that became my superpower. I started partnering with research teams, bombarded them with a lot of questions, and they loved it. I may have proposed to tweet to users about what to work on, which obviously got shut down for legal ramifications. I love that in the new Twitter, that's how Elon works. But TLDR, you got to find a way to start to talk to your users, and as a platform PM, that skill is already ingrained in you because you had that luxury. Second, platform products are inherently more complex compared to consumer products that are possibly around a range. So let me explain what that means. Platform products are a step function more complex, hairier, and longer. I was coming up with new authentication models, building up an entire data lineage as a platform PM, which required me to work with 15 different teams, tech stacks, and milestone every single thing very carefully. Consumer products, on the other hand, had a range. I could be doing something as simple as changing the button text, or I might be building a complex 0-to-1 subscription product. Taking those big swings and building those complex products didn't feel scary because turns out that was my baseline. I was used to talking to X number of teams to make it happen, right? The third and the last thing I want to talk about is how you are more strategically placed to create a perfect bridge between your vision and reality. And here's an oversimplified example. If you do not have experience building technical products, you'd probably share a grand vision with a lot of requirements in a well-formatted PRD. Your engineers will then step in to play the role of a technical product manager to translate those grand requirements into technical requirements, and then come back to you and share the sad news that, well, realistically, only 10% of what you were imagining is possible. But imagine if you can give your team the vision, your overall requirements, the translated technical requirements, and the milestones. There's two reasons why your engineers would love that. One, they don't always have to have a staff engineer playing the role of translating requirements, right? And two, you would have thought of all the things that would and wouldn't work in a reasonable environment. And so you've grounded your vision into reality, which means that execution is really easy for them. The takeaway is, if you know what you're doing really well in platform, you're in a pretty good position to make that switch if that's what you want to do going forward. And I would really urge you to do that. So now that we've talked about that switch, let's talk a little bit about how I went on from being an ICPM to a more managerial role. Here, I had to unlearn a lot of things. So I'll talk about 3 traits that I had to unlearn going from an IC to a manager role. Basically, forget everything I told you about in the last few minutes. No, I'm kidding. Well, so let's jump into it. If you've been a solid ICPM, chances are that you're struggling more to switch to a manager's role. And here's why. You're so used to perfection and controlling every aspect of the product that it's difficult to let it go. Or to have someone tackle the same product in a different way that feels less perfect than how you would have done it. You're also such a doer and so hands-on that the easiest way for you to coach people is to show them by doing it. And that's okay. Except the problem is that it doesn't work for product roles. Because the last thing your ICPMs and your team want is for you to do their work and take their limelight. So what you gotta learn is how you can let go of that PM perfection and delve into that territory of uncertainty and lead people from behind and not at the forefront of things. The second thing that's interesting is it's a great skill to have opinions as an ICPM and build a strong product intuition. And sustaining that intuition is powerful still as a manager. But what's even more powerful is to be able to delegate with trust, even if your opinions don't match your team's thinking. In fact, you are delegating hoping that you're proven wrong and your team is in fact smarter than what you've been. Now that takes a very good mix of humility, maturity, and the ability to strike a balance so you know when to intervene and direct the team and when to let it go and let people steer their own product. And the last thing I would call out is, in an IC world, success is really launching products. As a manager or even in senior IC roles, launching products is only probably 10% of success. A lot of it comes through various responsibilities like making strategic decisions on sunsetting projects, especially if they're low impact and they're eating up a lot of your team's bandwidth. My time was spent on hiring, sometimes firing people in service of the business needs. And of course, setting the team up for success, which indirectly, yes, translates into building amazing products. But there's 10 different things to worry about when you go into an organizational leadership role, where you got to think about everything from team's culture, retention, hiring, and what makes sense for the business, not just the product that you're looking at. All right, so we've talked about a couple of things in my product experience. What I want to end with is there is some traits that are absolutely necessary no matter what kind of PM you are, or even if you're in and out of your product roles. So I want to touch on these 3 things that are very close to my heart. So we're going to touch a little bit on the 3 most effective traits of a PM, no matter their focus area. The number 1 thing that can distinguish you as an excellent PM is in fact clarity of thought. Whether it's about a feature, a product, an initiative, or the whole company. And there's a very clear test for it. Can you describe your product in 1 line to somebody who has no context on it and they get it? At the same time, can you write 10 succinct lines on your product and go very deep into nuances and questions? If you can do both of those things well, you can now not only sell your vision, but also execute it. Put it differently, this is one trait that truly levels up your communication and sets you apart. Second, you want to think on your feet. When you're on a customer call or a stakeholder discussion, or even a sales call for that matter, if you can think on your feet, you would be infecting your audience with an energy that is almost infectious, and it's raising the bar of the conversation. So let me step back and explain, what does think mean? Think is more complex than what it sounds like. It involves listening in the moment, processing all the information you're hearing, contextualizing it from the history of all the things you've known, and based on that, predicting and asking the right questions. It is not an easy skill. It is something at least I developed over years being in the product role. But it's probably my favorite because it comes in handy in most of my personal and professional conversations. Last but not least, you want to be controlling the room no matter what. That means you want to navigate conversations and people at all times. If your agenda is to come to a meeting, discuss your weekend plans with no conclusive results, you just built a perfect graveyard of inefficiencies. The number one thing you can offer to yourself and to your engineers is to always control the conversation, starting with clear goals, engaging the room, and eventually closing it with next steps. It's funny that the same formula seems so easy and obvious, and yet we get lazy. It's so easy to say, I have 9 meetings and I don't have time to prepare for every single one. And yet that's the number one thing that you can do to, again, set yourself apart. With that, I'd like to wrap up with 3 big takeaways from here. 1, use your experience as a strategic advantage to get to the next thing. Your skills are always transferable if you know how to move them around. Think of them like credit card points. 2, sometimes it takes a bit of unlearning to get to the next role you're looking for, and that's fine. Let it go. And 3, always focus on clarity of thought and think on your feet. That would automatically help you control the conversation and succeed in whatever you're looking for. Thank you.